Good morning, everyone. It is, what is it, Stevie? Tuesday, the 12th of November. Derek Clark is not here. He's off to Iceland. Lucky him. So you're stuck with the rest of us for the remainder of the week, but we will try and get you through talking all things Rangers as usual. Do you get your questions in? This morning, we're going to talk a little bit about Danilo, a couple other topics that we didn't get through yesterday, but we should have time to answer some questions as well. But Stevie, first and foremost, how are you? I hear you've had a disrupted beauty sleep.
Yeah. If I look rough, it's because I am. If I look rougher than normal, it's because I am. Yeah. Two sick children is never easy to contend with. So yeah, I would love to say I'm bright and breezy, but I am here. So good morning, everyone.
You're here anyway. Exactly.
Ready to
Brilliant.
talk all things Rangers or something like that.
Brilliant. Exactly. Just the script. Right, Stevie. Let's talk. Let's do that then. Obviously, the optimism levels aren't sky high, but we're still here. We're still going to try and break down all the topics that matter every morning at 9:30. Today, we'll talk about Danilo because the Rangers front line has been a big bone of contention all season. Really, Cyril Desser's obviously got his 3 goals in the course of the last week. Away at Olympiacos, away at Motherwell, Hampden against Motherwell, and at home, the eventual winning goal against Hearts as well. Danilo is continuing his return from injury, made a really good impact in the Motherwell game, wasn't in the European squad for Thursday's game, Stevie, and then only came on slightly later in the game. I was a bit surprised at the time he came on, actually, in the home game against Hearts. I wonder, just to throw it to you at the start, how did you see Cyril Desser's last week before we come on to the conversation of Danilo? Because Chris had a bit of a discussion yesterday about it. He's the cause of some of Rangers' problems. He's equally been the solution because he's scored 3 really important goals over the course of the last week. Do you kind of agree with that? That it's just it's the same conversation with a player who's 29, has got his good bits, has got his bad bits, and he probably isn't going to change.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's been done to death as well.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see anything different. The positives of that, he's always there, he's always available, he's very robust, he has got the right attitude, and he pops up with goals. And in a team that isn't scoring goals, and let's be honest, it's not like we're looking the most exciting or the most attacking. He is the one that's putting the ball in the net, Joshua. So we will talk about Danilo a wee bit, but somebody said to me regarding Cyril Dessers in Greece, he was the reason why we got a point and the reason why we didn't get all 3.
Yeah,
which I think is quite an apt kind of description for him. And look, he misses chances, and funnily enough, I didn't get overly excited by what he said at the weekend with regards to his comments. I think he was just being pragmatic, and it was funny because I watched Match of the Day at the weekend and I saw Haaland miss a bucket load for City at Brighton, and then I watched Darwin Núñez for Liverpool do the exact same at home to Aston Villa. So there is merit to some of the things he says, but the problem is, Joshua, and even his biggest supporters will tell you that the biggest issue Rangers have had, and you look at the reaction when others have played, and we've went over the top with Eagleman's kind of cameos, and we've went over the top with Danilo's cameos because they do the simple things: hold the ball up, good touch, nice link up play, good positioning. Because Cyril Dessers doesn't do any of that. He's not an out ball. He can't hold the ball up. He doesn't occupy defenders. He doesn't help us bring the ball up 20, 30 yards up the pitch, which we need. He doesn't win you fouls. He doesn't do the basics of what a front man should do in terms of him being a lone front man, which he is. So there's the issues. And this is why there's such a clamour to get somebody else, because that's not his game. Yeah, I don't think he's ever played up in a 2 at Rangers. He wasn't bought to be first choice. So, there's a lot said about him, but where would you be in the last week without his 3 goals? He puts you get back in the game to get in a final. He takes the hardest chance possible in Greece.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful finish. And he's there on the spot on Sunday to put the ball in the net in a game where, without that moment, we didn't really look likely.
Yeah.
So, listen, as much as there is critics and there's things to be critical about, and there is, and I think it's fair, got to give him at least praise as well, because, without him, what is he up now? 11, 12 goals this season?
Yeah, I
Without
think maybe
him,
10, but around definitely in double figures.
yeah, so around that, without him, we're in big trouble. And it's not like this team isn't scoring goals, Joshua. Like 16 goals in the league this season. I read your piece yesterday, and it was excellent, if not fairly scary. Like that, it's just we're dreadfully bland.
Well, I'll put
the squad that's scoring goals is difficult.
Yeah, I'll put that to you, Stevie, because there's a question here from, who's it from? James, a friend of the show. He says, we need goals from other areas of the team. Can't expect strikers to get all our goals. Obviously, myself and Derek and Chris spoke about this yesterday after the game against Hearts. Rangers have 16 goals after 11 league games. 6 of those came against Ross County. And you can identify a lot of different causes for that issue, Stevie, but I guess at the core of the problem, and this perhaps explains why Tom Lawrence was playing as well, because if you look at the midfield three at the moment, it doesn't necessarily have a goal scorer within it. That Rangers team just doesn't have enough of a goal threat in it at the moment, doesn't it? Part of that's because, James Tavernier, again, it's a debate that's been done to death this season, but his role's also different. I don't think we're seeing him in the type of areas that he popped up to kind of create that Dessers goal, whether intentionally or whether he was shooting early on against Hearts. He's not in the box as much. Cherney's had a pretty good goal return all in, but he obviously had a slower start to the season. Barami's starting to get a few numbers off the left, but again, he's not someone who's got a track record of 20 goals or 15 goals, to my mind, in a season. So is that an important point as well, that as we come on to talk about Danilo, it's not just about the over-reliance on a number 9, but trying to find goals throughout the team or change the system that gets different players into different areas. Because at the moment, as we discussed yesterday, Rangers aren't scoring enough, but they're also not creating enough.
No, they're not. And, we look for advantages in performance and things, and we are ineffective from set pieces. So you're getting nothing from your central defenders, who you're hoping that throughout a season will maybe pitch in with 10 goals. And then you'll get wee odd chances from corners and stuff. We don't create anything from set pieces at all. Most of the time, they don't even go past the front man, which is the most disappointing thing. There's nothing from the midfield because they're quite hard working. You've got Barrie and Raskin in there who are doing really well, but they don't overly affect the final third.
Gosh, you are tired this morning, Stevie.
Talking about this Rangers attack.
I know.
And
what a vivid description of the Rangers attack at the moment.
And I happen to think as well, Joshua, right? And this is something that I was thinking of. I was thinking about what I was going to and how I was going to word this when I was showering this morning, and I was thinking about what I was going to say. And I watched this team on Sunday from a really good vantage point up in the lounges and the hospitality on Sunday. So you got a magic view of the whole pitch. You would have loved it. It was like tactical heaven for you because you could see absolutely everything. And we give up so much space, right, in that middle period, that middle section, because the middle three triangle, Raskin deep. Raskin's really deep, really, really deep on top of the central midfield defenders. The other two are really far forward. So that triangle's got a massive gap. And my Hearts just played in it the whole half. Yeah. And Rangers were almost happy to give them possession, but they didn't create anything because Rangers were really well organised. And Rangers actually, and I think we don't get enough credit for this, possibly, is the defending was really, really good. Aside of the two moments, Suter back pass, and when they were caught really square, Raskin missed a header, we were good. We were really good. We limited Hearts to very, very little. And, you look at the games where we played the same way, and Hibs was almost a carbon copy where they had so much of the ball and only really created that header. And Dundee United away, again, very, very similar, and most of the games have been like that this season. But the issue is we're not scoring enough at the other side. And I think the reason why, and this has been touched upon quite a lot on our pod by Shona, believe it or not, we are so deep. We are really deep, and that's where the disconnect is. It's almost like the defence is 20 yards behind everybody else. And if they just push up, it allows everybody else to get up. Because if you think about the couple of times, Joshua, we did break on Sunday, Dessers and Czerny were running in and had opportunities. They're running from 40, 50 yards away from goal instead of being running from 30 and 20 yards into goal and then becoming a really better opportunity on XG and stuff like that, because we're very deep and very defensive and we don't have that pace. So the reason why we're not getting goals from around the team is because we're not aggressive enough. There's very little risk and reward to how we play. It's very, very, very set up to nullify, I think. And that is a real issue because we are very defensive. So that's my kind of overall take on it.
Yeah, I think
right, just how I see it.
No, I think that we spoke about this again yesterday. The fact that there was actually quite a lot of periods in that first half, and I realise we're talking about the Hearts game again, but nonetheless, it's a lot of periods in that first half where Rangers were really deep. And the issue, Adam and I are going to speak about this in the Tactics podcast that will come out today or tomorrow. The issue there is, as you say, with Dessers, he's not a hold-up player. He doesn't really bring other people into play. You saw that even with Czerny and Danilo, the brief moments of link-up that they had at Hampden. You can see how a player at number 9 who does bring other people into play improves players around them because it gives them more options of what they can do when they're cutting in from the wing. But because Dessers doesn't get you up the pitch, and because Rangers they've kind of changed their shape a bit, they're more of a 4-3-3 or a 4-1-4-1 at the moment. The wingers are still deep. You've got Raskinen behind the midfield, and I agree they're not conceding an abundance of opportunities. If you look at how many moments Raskinen is picking up behind the midfield, but equally it leaves them, I think, pretty flat. It actually reminds me of a game. Do you remember the game early in Van Bronckhorst's tenure? Rangers won 2-0 away against Hearts, and Aribo scored that incredible goal. Yeah. But if you remember that game, Rangers were actually really deep, and Al McGregor made a lot of good saves on that day. To after Rangers had kind of raced into an early 2-goal lead, and I don't think it's coincidental because it's how coaches want to control games. And for me, Clement is less about territory and we need to be around the opposition box or we need to keep them away from ours. He wants to play transitional football. Vertical football is what he talks about. He talks a lot about duels as well. And if you look at the first goal that Rangers scored against Hearts, Stevie, it is that. It's back to front. It's at pace. It's playing through a team. The difficulty is, though, that rarely happens because Rangers really rarely have that space to play through. So I can't remember what point we were initially making. Oh, and the disconnect between the midfield and attack. You remember the moment against Hearts where the weekend where James Tavernier gave the ball away square? I think it was trying to play it into Nico Raskin, and he actually recovered the ball, but it was a one of many loose turnovers in that half. Again, I think too often Rangers are caught between they've got all these players at the top end of the pitch because Clement wants to go in behind and he wants to attack quickly and he doesn't want to spend too much time in his own half. But that can lead to maybe not many passing options or that balance between, controlling a game or trying to attack quickly can become a bit convoluted. So, but I guess to put it back to Stevie, these are discussions that we have been having for a while. This isn't a new topic necessarily, is it? And actually, when Clement came in, a lot of games were like this, where Rangers didn't give up many opportunities, in part because they weren't losing the ball in bad areas, because they weren't always building up through the centre. That's changed a little bit with Nico Raskin as your number 6. But it was very much about win by a 1 or 2 goal margin. A lot of those games came around winter last year, and don't give up many opportunities. But maybe arguably to play that style of football, you need the results to flow consistently for fans to buy in. And at the moment, obviously, the results haven't been that consistent, have they?
No, unfortunately not. We went through a period there, I think, with the 6 games between the international breaks, and we said that we really had to try and win, them all. And we've lost 6 points ground, haven't we, in the league? So I think that's where the obvious discontent comes with. It's difficult because I'll give you an example, right? And I'll just be absolutely honest. On Sunday, during that first half, I was thinking, right, how long's gone? We must be close to half time, and how long's gone? And I looked at the clock, and there's 22 minutes gone. And there was a part of me that was just like, oh, this is just it's difficult to watch. I think that's fair. And it's getting the balance right, Joshua. And I don't think we're getting the balance right. You spoke about, how they play, and that makes a lot of sense. It really does. But I just don't think there's enough to the team. And that's where I'm struggling with it. There needs to be perhaps the balances went in one way. But, and here's where I was thinking about this as well, Joshua. I asked them after Aberdeen to get results and just make sure they win the next couple of games and they're through to a final.
Yeah.
They got a really good point away in Europe, and they got a clean sheet and a win at home at Hearts. So I need to be, I don't know if I'm being completely unfair in what I'm saying. There needs to be balance too. I can't expect us to win every game 5-0. And I get it, understand completely. But I also think as well that we should be getting a wee bit more than what we're getting. That's the point.
Yeah. Is there an argument as well, Stevie, that because we've covered, I guess, the pessimistic side to death, and we will get onto Danilo at some point, but is there an argument as well that Clement has still not really he's lost both his wingers on one side, and I think his football's looked so much better when he's had wingers, when he's had natural players out wide who I think are so integral to his style of play because of the speed he wants to play at, because of the big open spaces. So is there an argument that when you've got Dessers and Danilo rotating up top with like a man to play minutes at points, and you've got, and I realise we're speaking in hypotheticals, but you've got Matondo and Cortez coming back on the left side. Yilmaz was obviously travelled over to Greece last week as he continues his journey back from his latest injury. Is there an argument as well that part of the reason maybe Rangers have been narrowly winning games and have won 5 of 7 games by a 1-goal margin, a result of the fact that Clement doesn't have many options? And so, again, some may point to the fact that, well, why didn't he change his front three at the weekend? Why didn't he bring on Yanis Hadji? Why did he leave it until 75 minutes to bring on Danilo for Dessers? But is there an argument there as well that circumstances are still preventing him from playing the type of football he wants to play, or do you not think that holds much water?
No, I think it does. But, that opens up a wider discussion for me in terms of why then have we put so much resources into the players we have, Diamande, Cortez, a lot of money in there that aren't really affecting our current could we have spent that better is kind of what I'm trying to waffle away to get more options. I think that I still think, and this goes back to a lot of what Clement has been dealt with, and I still think there's players there, Joshua, that we aren't getting the maximum out of, and because of the squad and the situation we're in, we need to maximise all our output of what we're spending and everything else, and we're maybe not getting that. And I think that coincides with players getting injured and things like that. And by the way, the injury situation has been better. It's just unfortunate that it's key players in his system. And you made a good point there about the wingers, because if you look back at that game against Ross County, which is the outlier performance this season, what did we have? We had Jeffy and Matondo on that left-hand side, pace, power, ripping it up. And that came after Dinamo Kiev, I think, away from home, where we were looking at Jeffy on the left and being able to play in front and being really quick, etc., etc. So it does make a lot of sense. And I think that Clement would argue that it's only a couple of players away from being a completely different Rangers side. And then he would possibly argue that we've defensively kind of got that set because we're not giving up much and we're getting clean sheets. He just needs to add the other bit. So in fairness to him, and if you're looking for a bit more of a kind of balance to what we're saying, then maybe that is a valid kind of point to highlight. But I think the issue is that the likes of Matondo and Cortez and Redvan and stuff like that, 4 to 6 weeks has become 3 months.
Yeah.
And that's where I think people are getting a wee bit touchy about it as well, possibly.
Yeah, right. Let's get to some comments. Derek, comment here saying the argument is, Joshua, without the wingers, we should be playing a different style, which is, I think, a fair point. Jason agreeing with an earlier point saying midfield wingers and subs need to chip in with more goals. That's the real problem. Neil saying, how do we feel about the beautiful relationship? Very positive from Neil on a Tuesday. But what's that, Stevie Barskin? Not sure if that'll catch on, but I like the creativity from Neil. We'll discuss the midfield in a minute. And a comment here, will we ever see the best of Danilo? More to the point, let's talk about Danilo, Stevie, because that was what we were meant to do 20 minutes ago. He came on against Motherwell, and I thought his impact was really good. Kind of started the move that led to the winning goal and played a big part with that run to create the space for Bayrami. First and foremost, were you surprised to not see more than 15 minutes of him in that game against Hearts at the weekend? Because he made actually as many passes in his 15 minutes as Dessers had in the 75 minutes. And, we've spoken about Dessers' qualities, but something that is not qualities. He's not someone who's going to... he's not someone who's really going to bring other people into play or drop into the space, and maybe that makes defending him a little bit more predictable for the opposition team. Were you surprised that Danilo didn't get more than 15 minutes on Sunday?
I'm not really surprised by anything that Philippe Clement does at this moment in time. And I don't mean that to be a negative. I just mean that sometimes when you try and guess his formation or guess his selection, that you never really get it right. So would I've liked to see more of Danny on Sunday? Absolutely. I think that especially after not playing in the B team game on the Tuesday night against Thistle, I thought he's going to get at least half an hour, possibly more. I don't think Cyril was doing enough that really allowed him to play as much as he did. I read a stat somewhere, and you're the man to tell me if this is correct or not, that Dessers had 17 touches on Sunday, and Danilo, in the short time that he had on, had 10.
I could believe it. Yeah, I don't know, but I could believe it.
I need to check that myself. So I read that on a stats thing online. So listen, it goes back to the thing, without this week, without Dessers, you're in big trouble. But could we have seen more from Danilo? I certainly would have hoped so. He's now got a couple of weeks international duty where, he can get more kind of fitness and more up to speed. But listen, I think Danilo's got a lot to offer to Rangers, and I think we saw a glimpse of it at Hampden, and his opportunities now, he's got to turn them into numbers, and he's got to turn them into more of what we saw at Hampden, because if he does that, he'll force his way in, and we need that. We need competition. We need thriving front men. We need these things to happen. He's probably got a perfect time to do it in as well, because we're coming up to a pretty serious run where he's not going to be involved against Nice or Spurs, so that's fine. But there is a lot of football coming up. I think we've got games every 3 days. There's league games where he can certainly be involved in. I think we've got Dundee United, St Johnstone, Kilmarnock, Ross County. So these are all games where, in theory, Rangers are going to have most of the possession, most of the ball and stuff like that, and going to carry most of the threat, allegedly. So there's plenty of game time there for Danilo, I think, and it's really key that we start to see longevity in his fitness, and we start to see more of what we saw in his cameo against Motherwell at Hampden. So I'm a big fan of Danilo. I think that he can do these things, and I'd like to see more. And if that coincides with Cortez, Matondo, etc., coming back, at least in the short term, we might get that boost from these players coming back. But I still think, Joshua, it's about getting to January in as best a shape as possible, and then reevaluating everything, because there's still there's big questions in the squad about guys who are not offering enough for the money they're on, and could we do some wheeling and dealing in January to try and bring in players that, if Clement is so vehemently kind of steadfast in this formation and how he's going to play, because he's shown that, then we need to try and possibly give him the tools that when these guys do get injured, he can stick to it, and we're not suffering for 3 months waiting on guys coming back because of this. So there is question marks around. I think that's probably a discussion for another day and a wider point, where who do you wheel and deal and what do we do with this squad? But I still think it is a case of trying to get through these next couple of weeks. I think when he comes back, he's got 6 or 7 weeks, but there's huge games in there. Comes opportunity with that, but Danilo can really put himself in the mix with some good performances and goals, that's for sure.
Yeah, and he probably helps you with that issue of not being able to get up the pitch. Again, that was what we saw with the winning goal against Motherwell. It was Danilo who liked to play before running beyond, and simple things we're discussing, but he's a very different player to Dessers, and that gives opposition defences a lot more to think about. Just finally then, Stevie, you talk about the next month. Obviously, you'll be on later in the week, and we'll continue right throughout the international break with vigour, talking about all things Rangers. However, the next month has some winnable home games, you would say. It still has a couple of difficult away games. Obviously, it has Spurs and it has Aberdeen. And I think it's Spurs, the League Cup final, and Aberdeen in succession, if I'm not wrong, or maybe Aberdeen slightly later. It might be the week after. That feels like such a big week, Stevie, because Clement needs to win one of these 2 Old Firm games. He's got the League Cup final at Hampden. He's then got the Old Firm at Ibrox just after the new year. This is entering, every month is critical, and obviously that November hasn't felt, or this international break, the mood hasn't felt very different to the last international break. Still a lot of questions. Rangers had those really difficult defeats against Aberdeen and Kilmarnock. But how do you see the next month and the significance of it, especially those big games against the likes of Spurs at home and 2 Old Firms to come?
Difficult, because I can honestly sit here and say I think we could do really well in Nice and drop points at McDermott Park, because that's where we are. I would like to see a strong league performance with those 4 games which are pointed out. You know, you start with United at home, St Johnstone away, Kelly, and then Ross County away. These are games where we have to maximise. There can be no let up in points in that. That needs to be 12 out of 12. I think Nice away, you know, you're looking for an Olympiacos style performance, and then you've got Spurs, which I think is a bit of a write-off. Sorry if that's pessimistic. I think that's as difficult as Lyon at home, possibly even more. I'm hoping that they don't go hell for leather, because I think if they do, we could be in real trouble. And then, unfortunately, I think the cup final, we're massive underdogs for that. But, you know, a game like that, I think the Scottish Cup in May, where we had possibly weaker options, proved that we can get up for these type of games. And, you know, a cup final, anything can happen. But I don't think in any way we're favourites for that. I think the problem for Clement comes that I don't think he can win the fans back in this little run of games, but I think he can lose them even more. And he has to win those 4 league games without question. And then Nice, you get a bit of give and take from, because nobody really expects. You would ask for a performance out there. Tottenham, you ask for a performance, nobody really expects. But if he goes into those games having had difficult things happen before, in terms of, you know, maybe not winning those league games, difficult results in Nice, then he faces the same kind of backlash as he did after Aberdeen, because a lot of people haven't forgotten those results. A lot of people are kind of set in their ways. The only thing that's going to fix that and give him time is by winning these really big games. And I'm not talking about Spurs or Nice. I'm talking about the cup final. Forget about Spurs and Nice. You can push them to the side. If he wins his league games and beats Celtic, people might calm down a wee bit and go, right. But that seems to me like a massive, massive ask. So what do I expect? Minimum 4 league wins up until the point where we take to the cup final. Europe, you can set aside a wee bit for the moment. And the cup final then becomes a real game changer for Clermont, because if we go into that and we get a bit of a pasting, like the 3-0 game at Parkhead, where it's a training game, which unfortunately might happen, then I think that's where you'll get a lot of people will just say, nope, this is done and dusted. And he's never going to be able to fix it and stuff like that. So it's not something that he can win them back on, but it is a huge, huge period for Rangers. And that needs, look, it's not just Clermont, Joshua, that needs the players to stand up and be counted, and the players to take responsibility and show a wee bit of bravery as well, because there's a lot of them still taking the safe option. And I'll point you to one thing. On Sunday, in the 93rd minute, Diamandi played a 60-yard back pass, which led to Rangers, Jack Butland kind of flapping a wee bit, kicks it out of field, and they had a long throw, which the goalie comes up for, which resulted in a penalty check, because our players aren't brave enough to go and show the conviction to call. Because we had plenty of opportunities in that last 15 minutes where the transitions were good and we were in position, Diamandi, Dowell, etc., to go and be forceful enough to show the quality to kill that off, and they're not doing it. So it's as much as it requires Philip Clermont, it also requires the players to show a wee bit of determination and a wee bit of positivity to go and kill things off as well, and stop hiding a wee bit behind circumstances and things that are going on, which I feel sometimes some of them are. So it's twofold, I think. But it's certainly, a big period, and I'm excited to see exactly how it unfolds. As weird as that seems, there's opportunity, Joshua. As much as it's negative at the moment, there is opportunity there.
Yeah, there's always opportunity in there. Perfect. Right, we'll leave it there. Thank you to Stevie for his time, as ever. You can read on the website this morning Chris Jack's view from the press box of the last month covering Rangers. Loads more content to come for you right throughout the international break. Do remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel for free if you have not done so already, and hit the notification bell so you never miss when we go live. We'll be back tomorrow morning, Johnny and Chris, so you can look forward to that. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.